See, when we think about money, there's narrow money and there's broad money. Economists use these terms, M1 versus M3. Narrow money is, think about it effectively just as currency, what we carry as basically notes. And when you think about broad money, that includes deposits as well. And deposits, if you think about it a little bit more deeply, and this is part of the book that I'm writing as well on money, that deposits actually come when loans are created. Okay, so now where does CBDC belong in this? At its core, every, whether it's deposit or even, even currency, right? It is an IOU. It is an IOU. When you read basically if you pick up the 500 rupee note, right? It is essentially a promise from the central bank that, the central bank basically effectively signed by the governor that I owe you 500 rupees. Deposit similarly is also an IOU. Now, CBDC is actually, is digital money. And, interestingly, James Tobin, who won the Nobel Prize, actually in 1962, just think about, 1962 wrote an article where he called deposits as fountain pen money. Deposits are fountain pen money because they actually get transferred with just the click of a button. But physical currency is not like that. Now, think about CBDC as fountain pen money, but basically issued by the Reserve Bank. So it's a liability of the Reserve Bank, much in the same way that the 500 rupee note or the 2000 rupee note is a liability of the Reserve Bank. But they have the fountain pen money kind of characteristic that deposits have. Deposits are basically liability of the bank. And so it's a combination of both of these characteristics. Now, this is, in terms of the what CBDC is. So central bank digital currency will be part of the narrow money, will not be part of broad money. And this is very important when people talk about, countries may lose monetary policy independence, etc. I think we have to be very careful because when we are talking about monetary policy, we are always talking about broad money. And broad money is created actually by banks when they give out loans. Of course, currency is a part, but of late, currency is maybe 15, 16%, not very large at all. Even with CBDC, therefore, central bank digital currency, it's unlikely that CBDC will be a very large part of broad money. The other point, so fears about losing monetary policy independence are something that have to be seen in this light. Now, point number one. Point number two is because this is digital currency, it gives the Reserve Bank, or any central bank in the world, opportunity to actually create smart contracts and maybe implement counter-cyclical monetary policy much better. For instance, during a time, let's say like a crisis, if you want to actually give out currency, let's say, just hypothetically, and you say that, this has to be spent within 3 months. You can do that with CBDC, which you cannot do with physical currency because physical currency can be taken and stored. So there are aspects that actually, positive aspects that I want to highlight because there's been a lot of fear that's been created about how CBDC may actually just take out the entire, potency of monetary policy. I think those fears may be overblown when you start thinking conceptually and deeply about these aspects.
In fact, what you're saying is far from that. It actually probably would aid it. Would you see that as probably a deficit financing by way of CBDC, if that were to arise?
No, I think we are mixing up two things here. Deficit financing is actually, that's a completely...
No, I'm talking about printing money.
I understand. I understand that, but printing money, eventually that is about the intersection between fiscal and monetary policy, and that's maybe for a different session. But focusing just on the monetary policy aspect, the CBDC gives sort of some arms in the tools of the central bank, which hitherto may not have been there, and that's the point I want to, I'm trying to highlight. The second, and that's the more important aspect, is that eventually money in the economy, which is broad money, that is a large part of it is created by banks. And that is something which, CBDC may not have a very large impact on. Third point, actually, there's a recent research paper by Bank of England economists who actually have shown that if you create CBDC to the extent of 30% of the overall, of the GDP of the country, that can actually increase the GDP growth by, I think, 3%. I may be, it's been a couple of months since I read that paper, but they're talking about some of the efficiency gains that can come from this. Again, let me be very, very clear. I am choosing to focus on some of the positive aspects of CBDC so that some of the fears on this aspect can be allayed. I think that CBDC should be something that should be done because, as I opined earlier as well, cryptocurrency actually for the common person, I think is a no-go, and therefore CBDC is something that we have to do. But the important, I think the success or the failure of the CBDC will critically depend on how secure and how robust is it created. I think that is because the temptation will definitely be there to go and play around with it, and I think that is something which is really critical.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.